how do I explain this thing? You're like, oh, geez. Yeah, where do we start? Tell me what they think money is, and the definition that they give you will tell me how to approach this. Bitcoin is becoming the more obvious asset choice, for any type of savings that you could want. Like real estate was the savings. So when you see good money, when you see beautifully engineered money like Bitcoin, like the most beautiful money that we can ever imagine, they can't recognize it for what it is because they themselves don't know what money is. That's how the economy is today, that everyone's working, driving to work, hustling, working hard, trying to produce for their family, but they're earning these things that are worthless. And when they try to go buy stuff with these tokens, these fiat dollars they're working for, they can barely buy the steaks for the barbecue. They can barely pay rent. They can't buy a house. I keep getting asked the question over and over, how do you explain Bitcoin? Like, oh, you have some, the same question, the question. I'm talking to some friend, Tom, you convinced me. I'm talking to some friends. How do I explain this thing? You're like, oh, geez. Yeah. Where do we start? Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also not something like, if you really want to start from zero, it's not something that you can explain within like a small conversation. Like you need a longer journey. And if he already knows gold, then there's a good starting point there. If he already has some money and those values in them, then you brought the digital thing in there. But with most people, you start in zero, and it's not accomplished in one.
No.
You can only spark something.
No. Yeah. Agreed. Lately I asked them, listen, how does that person you're talking to define money? Tell me what they think money is, and the definition that they give you will tell me how to approach this. Because if they can't define money, how do we have this conversation? So like, I need some baseline, and then usually that will give me some clue into how people are thinking and the definition they give me of money. Because some people will use the line like, well, the dollar used to be money when it was backed by gold. So then I'm like, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. So that's usually where I try to enter the conversation.
I love that way. I never heard that. But before we start with what is money, because I think it's a fascinating conversation, for the few people that don't know you, who are you and what are you doing in Bitcoin?
Sure. So my name is Tom Karadza. I worked in tech. I got, I'm that story, went to school, got a good job. I went to university, got a good job in tech. I worked for a company called Oracle, a database company, decided I didn't want to work in the corporate world, quit my job, and together with my brother launched Rockstar Real Estate, because in our 20s, we were buying rental properties as a way to outpace debasement. We didn't use those words at the time, but we realized, wow, if we buy these rental properties and people pay us rent and they produce cash flow, they seem to appreciate, and we get this cash flow component to it, it's a good way for us to, quote unquote, get ahead. And so I quit my job and started Rockstar Real Estate with my brother to help Canadians. Back in 2007, we started buy rental properties all across the greater Toronto area. And we've been doing that now for years. And, multiple people have hundreds, thousands of investors we've worked with on billions of dollars of rental properties. And then 2020 rolls around. Like everyone, Robin, I have some time. Someone mentions the Bitcoin standard to me. I had dismissed Bitcoin. I read the Bitcoin standard. I did not know Bitcoin had a supply cap. Like I didn't know there was a limit of 21 million. I didn't know anything. I didn't know about nodes. I didn't know about the mining. I didn't know about the architecture. And I bought my first bit of Bitcoin. And like most people, when you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, when you buy your first little bit and then you read more and learn more, you realize, holy shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear here, Robin. Like holy smokes. I don't have nearly enough Bitcoin. And then we started going down the rabbit hole even further, and we started talking about it with our real estate clients. And we said, listen, you need to introduce this into your portfolios. We've been talking rental properties, but there's this other thing that you need to look at. We've talked about gold for a long time, but you need to check this Bitcoin thing out. And so for the last 5 years now, we have basically turned our discussions with clients into hey, there's real estate, but look at all the properties of Bitcoin, investigate this thing. And we have client events where we bring out our clients as a bit of a thank you. And I was just mentioning to you before recording, we had 1,100 real estate investor clients out, and we had Leon Vankum come out from Germany to talk about it. And we had BTC sessions come in from Calgary. Jeff Booth has spoken at our events. Greg Foss has spoken at our events. So now we are like this weird business where we started with real estate as a means to financially get ahead and live life on your own terms. And now we're talking about both things, real estate and Bitcoin. And that's kind of how we got to this point, Robin. I don't know if that's too quick of a summary for you or not.
It's perfect. But you're still holding a real estate and developing things in real estate?
We are, yes. But it does become harder, and because there's always going to be a need. Like shelter is a need. Like people need a roof over their house, so and a business needs a roof. There's always going to be utility value of real estate. There's no doubt. It's just the monetization component of real estate is likely going to be removed from that asset class as Bitcoin grows and grabs more of that. So yes, we still have real estate. And I guess the reason that I'm hesitating with the answer is that Bitcoin is becoming the more obvious asset choice of, for any type of savings that you could want. Like real estate was the savings. It was almost like we would tell people, when you go to an ATM or a bank machine and there's like a checking button, in North America anyway, there was a checking button, a savings button. You might as well have replaced the savings button with the picture of a house, because all Canadians started buying real estate as their savings. And that was the way. And no Canadians really wanted to. None of our clients really wanted to buy nobody wants to become a landlord. You're forced into it. And now with Bitcoin, it's like, wow, there's this other option. And the difficulty becomes with most people that they don't have enough knowledge to fully understand what Bitcoin is. So it's not like there is a stampede out of the real estate gates, but more and more of our clients are adding Bitcoin to their lives. And some of the Bitcoin maxis on a percentage basis, maybe it's like 5% are Bitcoin maxis. They're selling real estate and buying Bitcoin. So it's still a mix for sure for us.
I'm asking because I see more and more real estate people, especially those who come on my show, smaller bubble, that just go ahead and sell real estate. And they all tell me, oh, I still have real estate, not because I want it, just because it takes a long time to get rid of all of it.
Yeah. And that's the case with us too. Like with myself and my brother, some of our properties are inside corporations in Canada, and there's certain tax things that we have to deal with. So it's not like we can snap our fingers. It's not like exactly as liquid as something like Bitcoin. So that's part of the reason. Yeah. You're just making me think, why the heck are we doing what we're doing, and it looks like our business, Robin, just many clients probably don't understand this, but at this point, I look at our business as a bit of a Trojan horse for Bitcoin, because they know they have to do something to outpace the debasement of their currency. They're working really hard. They don't understand why they're not getting ahead. They discover our business and they thought, oh, okay, I've heard real estate is a way to get ahead financially. We kind of bring them in. We teach them about rental properties, duplexes, student rental properties. Then we eventually teach them about central banking and how central banking is evil. So we take them through this journey. And then once we talk about central banking, how central banking is evil, then we kind of slyly introduce this concept of Bitcoin and say, hey, you should check out this little thing over here. So our business has become this weird Trojan horse for Bitcoin. It's almost like we're working for Bitcoin, but Bitcoin didn't hire us. But we are here working for Bitcoin on everyone's behalf, right? So, and it's a big step still for a lot of people to walk in the doors of our business. And if we were to say, hey, take your life savings and don't buy that property you thought you were going to buy, put it all into Bitcoin. Currently, for most people, that is too big of a jump still. There's going to be the Bitcoin maxis who won't understand that. And I consider myself a Bitcoin maxi, but it's mentally a big step for someone to take their whole life savings and having one discussion with you. We have to let people to come to this conclusion themselves. And I look at our business as facilitating that movement.
For me, it's also the percentage you have in Bitcoin also represents to a certain extent how convinced you are of it. And it would be reckless if you just started your Bitcoin journey to go all in, even though you don't understand it fully, because maybe then you also mess up custody, you mess up things, or you get panic sell because there's like a 20% drawdown or something like that. So you're 100%. I love that you mentioned that, because even though I'm 100%, like I have no Fiat left,
Sure,
I'm operating on a zero. I'm dancing around plus 2,000, minus 2,000 bank account to keep it always at zero. But first of all, I can do that because no wife, no family, no business. And I've done all the work since 5 years, 6 years almost in Bitcoin. And I'm really confident of that. And I've went through the 16,000 to 69,000 to 16,000 again cycles. And I did not sell, and I actually bought more. But that's not for everyone. And that's a very small amount of people that actually go through that. And people have to be confident of it and not just jump into that.
And that's what we tell, our clients. Some people, we actually were just speaking to a member of our own team yesterday, and he was saying that, he's been working really hard, and life's kind of tough and difficult to get ahead financially. And he was asking more and more about Bitcoin, which of course I welcomed. And he said, well, how much should I allocate to Bitcoin? And I'm like, well, how many hours have you spent studying it? Because if it's 100 hours, then I would say up to 10%. If it's 1,000 hours, then you can go all in. So if you haven't spent 100 hours, you're going to get kicked out. Like you said, the last thing I want is someone to get into Bitcoin. And when it's, it's a volatile asset. So when it spikes down, like we've all been through, just like you described, the last thing I want this guy to do is sell it. So you know what? If you spent 100 hours listening to podcasts, Robin, like yours, and reading different books, then I would say you can allocate up to 10%. If you spent 1,000 hours, then, have at it, put in 100%. And that's where we need to get people to. But we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is that the problem with most people when I talk to them about Bitcoin is that they don't have a definition of money. Because they will ask, this guy on our team was also saying he was speaking to some friends, and we don't stop talking about Bitcoin in our business. So he was then talking to some friends about Bitcoin, and they were challenging him a little bit, and he was asking for ways to describe what Bitcoin is. And I said, well, it's difficult to describe what Bitcoin is to somebody when they don't themselves know what money is. Like, ask them, what is money? How are you defining money? Because that's the starting point of the discussion that I'll usually have with people, because the answer sometimes, like the most advanced answer I will get, is usually something around, well, when the dollar, and they're referring to the US dollar at this point, when the dollar was backed by gold, I guess that was kind of like money. And I said, okay, let's break that apart a little bit. So the dollar in itself wasn't money. The thing that was money in that situation was the gold. The paper receipts were the dollars to make it more convenient, but the money itself was the gold. So what then are the properties of good money? And if I can get them to somehow start thinking about the properties of good money, then I can start comparing Bitcoin and showing them the properties of Bitcoin against the properties of gold. But I kind of need to get them into that framework. And I feel like I'm born in 1973. And I feel like anyone that's born in my generation, millennials, Robin, young guys like you, people who are born in the last 50 years, they don't know what money is. Like, you're born in an era where fiat was the thing. So you have no concept or knowledge of what money is. So when you see good money, when you see beautifully engineered money like Bitcoin, like the most beautiful money that we can ever imagine, they can't recognize it for what it is because they themselves don't know what money is. And it's the hardest thing to get someone to break down. Like, what are you working for? What are you spending your time and your labor? And what are you exchanging your time and your labor for? And they don't even understand it. And I look at it like this. Do you know what Chuck E. Cheese is, or Dave and Buster's, or like a fairground where you play those games and you get like tokens that come out of the machines? You familiar with that kind of concept? In North America, there's like Chuck E. Cheese or Dave and Buster's. You go and play video games, and like you roll balls, you throw the basketball. And if you do well at it, you get like tickets or virtual tokens. And I look at the economy today as that people are spending all this time. They're spending their whole days working for these tokens. And then when you cash out at these places, Robin, just so you know, you go to this little kiosk where you can like take your tokens and get stuff. But you literally play these games all day. You're sweaty, you're exhausted, and you go to cash out. And for all the effort that you put in, you can usually get like a pencil. You know what I mean? Like, that's your grand prize. You spend all day. And then you get a pencil, and that was the reward. And I feel like that's how the economy is today, that everyone's working, driving to work, hustling, working hard, trying to produce for their family, but they're earning these things that are worthless. And when they try to go buy stuff with these tokens, these fiat dollars they're working for, they can barely buy the steaks for the barbecue. They can barely pay rent. They can't buy a house. And there's those of us who understand what money is, standing on the outside, just like you're standing on the outside of the fairground with the real money and looking at all the people play. And when they cash out of the fairground, they don't really have that much real money. And I look at the economy today and thinking, oh, these people who are playing in the fiat world exclusively, when they cash out, they can't get that much real money. And you're just standing over here on the sidelines kind of saying like, hey guys, like there's this real money over here. And if you spend your time accumulating that and saving that, you'll be so far ahead instead of just being caught up in the circus of earning these fiat dollars that are constantly getting debased on you. It would be like going to Dave and Buster's thinking that you're going to get, 10,000 tokens so that you can get the skateboard. And then right before you go to get the skateboard, they debase the value of the tokens. And, you thought you can get the skateboard, but the skateboard's now 20,000 tokens. It's just ridiculous that, this is where people are stuck, and it's no fault of their own, but it's unfortunate that that's the state of things. Robin, I've never used that example before, so I don't know if that made any sense to you, but that's how I'm going. That's how I'm going to start using it with some of my friends.
It makes a lot of sense. And the question, because I never also looked at that comparison, but I looked at similar ones. And let's stick with that example. The thing is always, when do people realize that they are sweating all day long and they are working for money that someone else just prints? That someone else just does, like the game developers that just prints the token. It's basically the central bank. They don't have to do anything to print those dollars. When do people realize that they use fake money? Because when I talk about made up money, they're like, oh, it's so funny. You talk about made up money and you use some magic internet Bitcoin token that is made up. And I'm like, no, like, but there's energy and then proof of work, and they can just print it out, and there's no one that can print money. It's really hard for people to grasp how to get out of that mindset, because they have been so framed that fiat money is money, period. So that's usually the answer I get.
Yeah. And then when people work for it and they can't get ahead, whether they can articulate it or not, there's a certain level of angst or frustration that's created in their lives, whether they're a young person or they're somebody with a family. And then that gets represented in the society when they're talking to their neighbors and they're talking to their family. This undercurrent of stress exists because they're spending all their livelihood earning these things that aren't a fair exchange of their time and labor. So they're not able to produce for themselves and their family what they want to produce. And they carry this weight around. And then that weight gets articulated or expressed in the community because the exchanges between people in the community then have an undercurrent of angst to them. So when two neighbors see each other and they're both slightly struggling, they're not completely joyful or they're not completely happy, and they can't come from a place of love. They're coming from a place of lack of scarcity. Everyone's trying to grab for more. And so it produces, whether people understand this or not, it's in society or in your local community, it produces a undercurrent of fear, of scarcity, of lack, instead of a place of abundance and love and helpfulness. And if we can get people to save in a good money, it changes the very base of society, because people are acting or coming from a place of abundance. You can help your neighbor. You can be charitable. You have enough for your family so that you can give to other people more willingly. So it really changes all of society. And because we have a fiat dollar the way we have it, there's elections going on in Canada right now. And the elections I've never seen elections so hotly contested in Canada. Like, Canadians generally don't go out to vote. This is a huge election in Canada happening right now. And a lot of people are going to vote for the very thing that is causing the problems that they are experiencing. This is something Jeff Booth talks about all the time. Is that you have a bunch of Canadians who housing prices here, Robin, are insane. Like on the outskirts of Toronto, to get a nice single family home, you're talking about $1 million. Like I'm talking a very basic single family home. In some areas, that's not even a single family home. It might be a townhome for $1 million. It's not uncommon to get a home here for 1.5, 2, 2.5, $3 million. And people can't afford all of this. So the elections are coming. They're going to vote for the politicians who are going to print more money because they're running under a platform that they're going to build more houses for Canadians. The government can't build any more houses. They don't have savings. So they're going to print more money, debase the currency further, which is going to create the price of assets and the price of groceries will increase because of that. But Canadians are going to vote for that. And it's going to perpetuate the problem even further. What Bitcoin introduces, as many people have explained, it's like the pin that kind of pops everything. Right? It's the change that we need where, on a Bitcoin standard, as more and more people progress there, we can get out of this cycle that is just pulling everybody down. So anyway, I didn't mean to bring the Canadian elections up into this. It's just, that's what happens at a societal level. And it's unfortunate. It's sad.
It's super. Yeah, politics is interesting because ever since the Trump election, more politics came into my podcast for some reason. But I think it's an interesting topic. Because do you think Bitcoin is political? Some see it completely outside of political. Some say, "Oh, Bitcoin is the most political thing ever."
Yeah, I don't see it as political at all. To me, Bitcoin is it's almost like a truth mechanism. Or the way I like to think about it is Bitcoin is bringing order to a chaotic, complex ecosystem of humanity, and humanity will benefit from order. So Bitcoin is forcing order in a complex system. It's kind of like, I believe everyone can elevate their own consciousness by making good decisions. You make good decisions over and over. You live by principle. You live in integrity with your own principles. You make good decisions. And I believe your consciousness elevates, your energy elevates. You kind of like raise yourself to a higher level. The frequency that you give off, Robin, is at like a different level. And I feel like Bitcoin is forcing good decisions on a complex, chaotic system that has not been making good decisions. And it's not political. It's going to elevate humanity. Like it's an inflection point in the history of humanity that is going to elevate humanity to a higher level, a higher frequency. Making better decisions compounded over time is going to produce a much better society. So, it's kind of like this truth mechanism, like it's forcing order. And it will affect all of us at an individual level. It'll affect your community. It'll affect your larger state or province or area. And it'll affect, things nationally as well. It'll take time. But I think it's like this most beautiful thing in history that is forcing order in a complex system that has been making bad decisions for some time. And for whatever reason, Bitcoin arrived when it did, and it's going to force a lot of good decisions.
I love that way of thinking about it. Do you see fiat as a soft and modern form of slavery?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think yes, because I think what fiat has done is removed property rights from us. So for example, like when money was real, and the last round of real money might have been gold, when you could custody the gold yourself in your pocket, which nobody does anymore, or very few, that was yours. You owned that property. You weren't like a serf. You weren't a slave to the system. You had that. What property do we have right now? Like if I tell people all the time, my friends who have stocks, I'm like, well, if the banking system has a problem and the bank shut down for 5 days, are you going to get your Apple stocks or your Google stocks? Like, do you even get the shares of those companies, or do you just have ownership as digits on a screen? Like if the bank closes down, what property rights do you have? In real estate, what property rights do you really have? Any real estate investor wouldn't be honest unless they admitted you have to pay your property taxes all the time. If you don't pay your property taxes, the government's going to come and take that property from you. So fiat to me just was the last step of removing property rights almost entirely from you. Until Bitcoin arrived, I didn't realize until Bitcoin arrived, I'm like, wow, like I actually owned this. If I take self-custody of Bitcoin, I own this property. Like I control this property directly. Nobody can change that. I need to have some responsibility about what I'm doing, but I own this. Fiat is like ultimate slavery to me. It's like removed money. I exchange my time and my labor for money, but I don't own the money. I owned my time and labor. I thought I exchange it for money. I don't own this money. It ends up in a bank. And if the bank shuts down for a day, I don't even get access to my own money. So yeah, it's just a brutal system.
I was before Bitcoin. I almost went into real estate, and it was right at the time where I started also paying attention to Bitcoin. And there was a Bitcoin podcast and I never told that story. It's so funny where someone said, "Do you really own real estate if you have to pay property tax for just holding it? Do you really own it then?" And I was like. I don't own it. Like if I'm forced to pay taxes just for holding it, how good are the property rights of a property of that real estate? And it opened my eyes, and Bitcoin actually I don't want to say it like that, but saved me from real estate.
No, you could say
otherwise,
it like that.
Otherwise, I probably would have been into real estate.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like to me, real estate is better than maybe owning some equity where you don't actually have the share ownership, because at least the property is outside of the system in that the tenants are paying you directly for the rent, right? So, okay, there might be levels to this, but Bitcoin is true property ownership, where you self-custody it. So it's yet a further level of ownership. And not just that, real estate, and I think Canadians are waking up to this, for the first time, real estate has jurisdictional risk. I think in Europe, with kind of like the history of Europe, maybe people have always understood there's been jurisdictional risk in Europe. Like I explained that my father's from Croatia. That place in Croatia always seems to have some war break out every, 40 or 50 years. There's always going to be some war going on there, and then property rights change around. Whoever took over the land at that point is getting the piece of property. So maybe in European, the European mind, the real estate has had less rights than maybe here, whereas Canadians think, well, that's my real estate, I own it. I'm like, well, no, I don't really think you do. Like you said, if you're not paying the property taxes, do you really own that? And then the jurisdictional risk today is that governments are getting, more and more desperate. So the taxes are changing, and there's ideas of taxing Canadian real estate higher and higher and higher. They've floated the idea, then they've pulled it back, but it's been floated out a few times where you're going to be taxed more and maybe eventually taxed on unrealized gains. So now real estate has a jurisdictional risk, whereas Canadians never thought about that before. And I think the reason that you never really even considered that a risk is because there was no alternative. Canadians, we can't open up US bank accounts very easily, not as a person. It's not easy to open a US bank account. So you're kind of locked into the Canadian system, and the Canadian system has been relatively good compared to the rest of the world. But now with the existence of a Bitcoin that is global, that you can move around, you can custody it yourself, you kind of have something to compare the real estate to. And it kind of shows a lot of the flaws that exist in real estate, whether real estate people want to admit it or not. All the positives that real estate had kind of still exist, but they're maybe not quite as great anymore when something like Bitcoin exists.
There's a better option all of a sudden on the table. I hear a lot of Bitcoiner actually wanting their own home. I see a lot of Bitcoiner actually saying, "Oh, I want to either already have my own home and want to keep it, and I want it maybe down the road because I don't have it right now. Maybe in 10, 20 years, I want to own my own home. Maybe, and there have been multiples that said like, oh, if I can pay my dream home with, I don't know, 10% or 20% of my stack, I will do that." Is there a thing to owning your own home? Is that, as a Bitcoiner, is that outside of the emotional reason? I mean, if you want it emotionally, then there's no discussion around finances. But does it make sense for Bitcoiners either now or down the line to actually own a home?
I think when you have a family, or if you want a family, it's nice to be able to have a home that is yours, and you're not renting where somebody you're renting from can kind of tell you to leave. So I think when you're starting a family, it is a nice feeling to call one place your home, knowing that it has all the negatives that we mentioned, that you have to pay property tax and maintain it. I do believe that when you have a family, you're raising kids, or if you want to raise kids, there is some peace of mind that comes from calling one place your home. I think maybe we can move on from the requirement of a mansion or a penthouse condo. I think what Bitcoin does is it maybe frames the type of home that somebody would buy in a different light. That, the dream might have been for some people to have this giant home as some status symbol. I think maybe Bitcoin is changing that. So maybe you don't need quite the extravagant home that you once pictured, perhaps. But I do think there is some value in knowing that there's a place for you to sleep at night that you can call your own. I believe that's still, the shelter is obviously still a need to call one place your place. I don't know. I think there's still some value there. I just think that maybe, I know what it's done for what Bitcoin's done for my life is we're thinking about possibly moving right now. And it's just changed the way I think about it. It's not we don't really need to get this home that maybe the way I thought about it before, like some showpiece home or something that would show how successful we are or something like that. I didn't really think about that too much before. I didn't really need that, but it's definitely gone now. Get me something that has utility, that is functional, maybe is where I want to be, close to some, coffee shops and some cafes with some good people. So it's kind of changed it, but I do think there is some value in having a place to live and kind of sleep at night.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Robin?
I hope, because I'm young and I'm 26 now, I hope that Bitcoin has demonetized real estate in the next 10 to 20 years so much that when I'm 30, 35, 40, maybe 45, that a home is all of a sudden something affordable again, something that you can actually buy. Something for me, real estate is either a business or a consumption good. So you don't buy it to save in this. It's not a savings vehicle. Mm-hmm. Yes, real estate will always do better than the US dollar, but it will always do worse against Bitcoin. So for me, I opt in the best money with Bitcoin. And as a consumption good, I can buy it with my Bitcoin, or it's a business. If you have tenants in there and you have cash flow, then it's any other business where you have to operate it. It's just not a savings device for me. So I would only buy it if it's with a small amount of my stack possible, and I'm aware of it that the money would have been better in Bitcoin, but I still do it because I want to found my own family in there. I want to have those things. I personally still want that. I want to own my own home. I currently rent, but at some point I do want that. And it's so funny when we talk to all Bitcoiners, they all see, okay, Bitcoin is the superior asset, but I still want to have a home at the end of the day at some point. There's a lot of people, Bitcoiners, that never want to own a home, but there are a lot of Bitcoiners that do want to own their own homes. Yeah,
I think too, just for I have children, and it's just nice to be able to say, that's our home. That's, I don't know. There's that to me, there's just kind of this peace of mind that comes from it, just to have this place that is ours. So, and it's still a need. I would like the monetization to come out of it as well. When I finished school, a starting salary was coming out of university might have been around $45,000 a year, $50,000 a year if you were lucky. And you could get on the outskirts of Toronto, you could get a 4-bedroom home, 2-car garage with a driveway up the side, like a suburban home, but 4-bedroom and maybe 2,500 square feet. I'm not sure how many meters that would be. But a good size home. You could get it for $250,000. So you're making $50,000, it's $250,000. It seemed expensive to me at the time, but it was you could kind of sort of handle it. That same home, I've moved since then, but that same home right now sells for about 1.6 million. Okay. It used to be 250,000. So this is, how many years ago would this be? This is 25 years ago or so, 26 years ago. And starting salaries have moved from 45 or 50 to 55, 60 coming out of university. So the home has got, the monetization of these homes. And if, and we map it out against the debasement of the currency, And property prices in this area have gone up on a compounded basis from the time I was born at about, 7% or so compounded. The compound annual growth rate of property is 7%. The M2 money supply in this country is about 8%, 8.7%. So like they've just been carried forward by the debasement of the currency. It's just completely ridiculous. So people look at real estate as an investment in this country, and they don't understand all it is has been a hard asset that hasn't been, you couldn't print it. So the only price appreciation really that it got came from the debasement of the currency. It's like the hardest thing for people to understand, right? But yeah, I hope it loses its monetization value as well. And that's just another thing in Bitcoin that will bring it back, will change kind of the culture, the community, the society, people's interactions when it brings it back to the utility value. So someone like yourself, Robin, can like buy a house without separating yourself from all your savings and going into debt for like the next 25 years of your life.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in the jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. I saw this amazing pyramid where it was a finite asset, so with a hard cap. Then the second one was with scarce asset, so gold, real estate that would be scarce. Because there's more coming, but there's some proof of work to real estate, there's some proof of work to gold, and then there's like infinite assets with US dollar and all the fiat currencies. And I said, make the hardest asset your standard, but it's okay to own some scarce asset. Like if you want to own, I don't know, a collectible car, something like your own home. Maybe you have some small gold bars at home. There's nothing wrong with that. But make the finite, the hardest asset of them all, make that your default. I think that's how I look at it. But I do want to own some home.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're lucky. You're coming into the time that, I remember the late 90s when the tech bubble was going. In the late 90s, people would register URLs like, I'll never forget millionaire.com. Like when I was working for a tech company out of the US, I was in Canada, and they registered the URL millionaire.com, and it was going to go public on the stock market. And I remember asking my friend, I'm like, well, why would we try and chase this IPO? Like, why should we invest in this IPO? And he said, Tom, you don't understand. This is where all the millionaires are going to go, to millionaire.com. Like, that was the whole business case for millionaire.com. Like, the millionaires were going to go to this website. I don't know what they were going to do there, but this was the business case. And like, it all kind of crashed down. The tech bubble kind of crashed in the early 2000s, and like Oracle had layoffs. I remember people seeing like people walk out and kind of, just it was just all so ridiculous. But I saw that trend of like the internet evolving through that era, and some great stuff came out of it. And then there was another trend where, we were always on our desktop, but then the mobile phone really took off as this trend. And if you could look at any of those trends and participate in them, you could really make some great gains for yourself. Like, if you bought Amazon in the late 1990s, early 2000s and stuck with it, you didn't realize how it was going to like digitize all of retail and change supply chains all around the world. If you watched the mobile change and jumped onto the iPhone when it came out, you could have made some great gains as everything went mobile. You happen to be at this era where there's this other great trend that's happening. And I don't know how many more great trends I'll see in my lifetime, where Bitcoin has come, and it's literally deconstructing the entire old global financial system that was it was global, but it was also very regionalized. And it's producing a completely digital, pure free market that is global. And you're getting to ride that wave, Robin. Like, you're basically at this beautiful moment in history where you're going to ride something that is going to take the entire old financial system and replace it. And you're at the right place at the right time. So I really think 20 years from now, you'll look back on this moment and just say, wow, how lucky was I? Even though real estate prices are still high, like, you're at this moment. Like, if you think about the existing traditional banking system, we've had for the last, 20 years at least, since China came into the World Trade Organization. So I would say 25 years, 30 years of, global trade. But on top of global trade, we had regional banking. So in Canada, like I mentioned, you could only really get access to Canadian banking in the Canadian dollar, right? It wasn't easy to get. I couldn't really get a euro bank account very easily. I couldn't really do business as an individual with you very easily. We would have to like try to wire money. I would have to try and change my Canadian dollars to euros. I'd get it over to you. They would hold the money for some period. So the banking, even though there was global trade happening, there was regional banking. We're now transitioning back to more regional trade zones. You see what the US is doing with tariffs. You can see the world is kind of going back to some sort of Europe is talking about changes. North America is talking about changes. America is definitely talking about changes. We're going almost back to regional trade areas. We'll see if that works out or not. But global banking, and no one is prepared for that. We have a new system with Bitcoin that is introducing global free market banking to all of us. And on top of that banking, you have things like artificial intelligence that is universally accessible to everyone. So the world is shifting from like this weird situation where we were kind of compartmentalized in our banking and the way we exchange value, to this new world that is global banking with global artificial intelligence, where you can start a business, the same business I could start here, you could start where you are. Somebody in Brazil can start it. Somebody in Argentina can start it. The next 10 years is going to catch a lot of people off guard, but mostly the regionalized banking centers and the powers that be in North America. So Toronto is a huge financial hub for Canada. These financial institutions are going to be so caught off guard over the next 10 years as global banking starts sucking value out of this old system, putting it into a new system. And the money that transfers from the old system into the new system, it's not going back. You and I, as we transfer more of our time and our energy and more of our fiat from one world into a new world, it's not like you or I are thinking we're putting the money back. So this new world is going to have more of the value. And the people in that world that have more of the value are going to make the decisions on where they invest, what businesses they bring. So this is going to flourish over here, and people are going to deny it and fight it. And the people in the old world are slowly going to die off, just like the post office died off to email, just like the local retailer died off to Amazon. The local regional banks are going to die off to this new digital system. It's going to be quite fascinating this next 10 years. And what kind of gives me a lot of hope and encouragement, there's people like you out there who are going to ride the wave, and you're going to be the decision makers and the stewards of this new world. It's pretty encouraging. Like, it's pretty exciting.
I'm getting bullisher when I listen to you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. Like all of the value, like how much value am I really going to put back into the old world that is in Bitcoin? I don't really know. Like, I'm just going to take a little bit here and there, maybe out of some need, but I'm not going to put a lot of it back. It's kind of like when email came out and we were able to communicate through TCP/IP. I remember people telling me, "Well, Tom, legal documents are never going to be sent via email. They're never, Tom, settle down. Legal documents will always be sent in the mail. You're always going to need a signature on them. So this email thing is kind of cute, but it's not for real business." Like, Robin, I really had people tell me this in the early 2000s. And as a tech guy, I remember thinking, really, that's kind of like weird. Why wouldn't you just like attach this thing to an email? I'll print it off and sign it. Now you can do digital signatures. I'll print it off and sign it, take pictures, send it back to you. Now that's done all the time. But at that time, people couldn't see it. Now, in the real estate world here, in this area anyway, 99% of everything is done digitally. Everything left that old world. Canada Post doesn't handle any of that type of communication anymore. Why would the banking system be any different? Why would that happen with TCP/IP and the post office and email, and not the same lack of use of an old banking system happen? It's going to be the same thing. As soon as I am able to transfer you funds through Bitcoin, why would I ever go back to the banking system? And for even the people that want to hold on longer, there's wallets like Aqua Wallet. Have you played around with Aqua Wallet? Very much?
Not enough, no.
No, okay. Aqua Wallet has like USDT. It has Tether built into it. So like if somebody didn't want to use Bitcoin for whatever reason, and they wanted to transfer value in US dollars, like let's say you there had an Aqua Wallet, I could just send you USDT. Not that we would want to as Bitcoiners, but that's more value that has been extracted out of the old banking system and put into the new system. To me, that's just going to further accelerate the evolution of Bitcoin and the amount of value in the world that Bitcoin holds. It just seems inevitable to me.
Will there be any banks? Like when you describe it like that, you kind of get to thinking of what is the real value of having a bank then? Yeah, maybe you want some partner that helps you custody your Bitcoin, which is, I don't know, Casa Unchained and those kind of things, or a service provider like the Bitcoin way that helps you with that. But the banking in the traditional sense is that then?
The old banks are. I get into this debate with my brother all the time because he thinks I'm being too much a Bitcoiner when I say this. But yeah, the old banks. Why would you need them? I think there's new banks emerging right now, like Strategy. MSTR is going to be a new bank. There's no doubt. To me, we are witnessing the emergence of a new bank that is going to produce financial services to different corporations. I think Tether, the way it's behaving right now, is morphing into a new bank. So I think you're going to see new financial institutions, and I think they're already rising, just nobody's identifying them. And the old ones that just offer, like, what am I getting from these old banks? I get to deposit some fiat. I have to pay $50 to send a wire. Like I transfer money from this old bank into like a trading account to be able to like buy some Apple shares or something. Like what value are they really when Bitcoin in this new ecosystem exist? What do they offer me? So I think there's going to be banking. I think there's always going to be banking because there's always going to be a need for somebody to borrow. There's always going to be collateral being used. Bitcoin will be the best collateral. There's always going to be those needs. So yeah, I think banking is going to exist. I just think the old fiat banks don't see this coming. Like I just think they're going to be sideswiped. I really feel like companies like Strategy with Michael Saylor, they've opened up this black hole into the financial system that is sucking up all the value into the new system. So now Bitcoin is sucking up all the value in two ways. Bitcoiners like me and you who are going into self-custody, and we're exchanging our fiat for Bitcoin and choosing not really to go back unless we absolutely need to take some of our savings and go back out of necessity. But you and I, if I see you somewhere at a Bitcoin conference or night, you buy me lunch and I pay you back, I'm just going to probably pay you back in straight Bitcoin. Why am I going to go through some weird thing to get euros and that kind of stuff? So Bitcoin has opened up a black hole to suck out the value from the old system to the new system at the individual level. And now there's companies like Strategy who are opening up a black hole, sucking out all the value from the old financial system into this new system. And the old banks don't even see this happening yet. But you see the rise, and Michael Saylor will even talk about Strategy being a Bitcoin treasury. And to me, that's just the emergence of the new system. It's kind of like when Amazon came out with retail, people were like, oh my gosh, Tom, I'm never going to buy a couch from Amazon. I'll never buy a couch from Amazon. I'll never buy a pair of jeans from Amazon. I want to try them on. I'll never buy shoes from Amazon. I need to try them on. Now, what does everyone buy from Amazon? Absolutely everything. And I feel like the same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin and these new banks. People are looking at Strategy right now thinking, well, I don't really know what it is. I don't know what the guy's doing. I think, he's crazy. And really what I see is the emergence of a brand new financial institution that is continuing to offer new products to the market and is going to be one of the new banks going forward. So yeah, it's wild.
It's awesome when you've seen the internet adoption, because I haven't, obviously. What have you learned from what you've seen there, especially as you also worked at Oracle? What you have learned from the internet adoption, how fast it's going, how people react to certain things, as you already said with Amazon. No, nobody will buy it. Obviously, they buy everything from Amazon. That you're now seeing already starting with Bitcoin. And what are you learning from that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because the biggest thing is I'll never forget when I was at Oracle. It was like 2004, and the internet adoption was already really strong. I was in a tech company, and there was a company called NetSuite, which was a bunch of guys from Oracle who left to start an accounting software as a service business where companies could put all their accounting into the cloud, into the internet. And at the time, that was almost blasphemy, because people thought, oh my gosh, like my accounting information is very precious to me as a company. I will have a computer room. All businesses, Robin, used to have a computer room. Okay. It didn't matter what size of business you were. Once the digital age came, you had this computer room, you had some servers in there that handled your email. You had to hire some IT guy. Even if you were selling shoes, you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to hire some IT guy to run my email. And the servers were in your office in a closet. And somebody would go in there and monkey around with the email and, set up your servers for your Microsoft Access database that would keep your accounting information there and handle your email. So when NetSuite in 2004 already existed, I was switching from Oracle to NetSuite. It was all Oracle guys that started NetSuite, and I got recruited over there. And I remember telling my manager at Oracle, this is late 2004, maybe early 2005. I said, oh my gosh, there's this great opportunity. I'm going to go to NetSuite because all of the information, it's very clear to me, it's leaving the old technology and it's going into the cloud. Nobody's going to have these computer servers in their offices anymore. It's all going to be on the internet. And he looked at me and he said, are you crazy? Nobody's going to do that. No businesses are going to put their accounting information, the very lifeblood of their organization, into the cloud. Everybody's going to always have that themselves. That's just too precious. I remember looking at him thinking, don't you already do online banking? Like, are you not already doing online banking? This is just the extension of that. So I left. I went to NetSuite. 2 years later, so 24 months later, NetSuite goes public on the New York Stock Exchange for $1 billion valuation. So this is somebody at Oracle who was in the tech industry, who could not see the emergence of a brand new service and how people's behavior would change, and they would just go into this new system out of convenience. And then it became obvious when it went public. Everybody was like, oh, okay, I guess this is the new way. And I feel like that's the same way with Bitcoin today. where everybody looks at Bitcoin today, and it's a little clunky still, even though it's gotten a lot better since I got in 5 years ago. Self-custody, you got to get these hardware wallets, and it's like kind of like a little clunky. But then you got these new apps that are coming out now, and we mentioned Aqua already, which is like quite beautiful. Aqua has Bitcoin. It has an integrated Lightning and Liquid. You can make Lightning payments right from Aqua. You can change Bitcoin to USDT if you want, or better yet, USDT right into Bitcoin, right inside the app. And why would I want anything? This is now becoming like a full banking app. Now, as a Canadian, I get access to US dollar exposure if I so choose. I get to save in Bitcoin, all in this one thing. And I feel like I'm seeing the tech trends all over again, where nobody can see the bank. Everyone's looking at the existing traditional banks saying, oh my God, they're never really going to be, they're so big in Canada. Canada has like 5 big banks, Robin. And everyone's like, oh, nothing will ever happen to them. And I'm just thinking, are you guys kidding me? These things are under threat and they don't know it. So it's like the same trends in tech that are happening all over again. And they happen kind of slowly, the whole meme of slowly, then suddenly. It's like the exact same thing happening. And I think the suddenly moment, maybe because I'm a Bitcoiner, I'll say this is like, I think it's sooner than later.
It's so interesting. I think people don't get exponential growth, and people don't get the new thing there. And it's also interesting how the new thing is under complete, how should I say that? If you say to someone, oh, like Bitcoin is that idea, Bitcoin is that idea, if you go down the orange pilling lane, there are things coming up of like, oh, quantum computing. Nobody asks that about their banking account, if they are quantum resistant. But they're asking that about the new thing. So it's always interesting how the new thing has to be perfect and is still getting critical points wherever they can find even a small thing. And the old system never gets questioned if it actually makes sense to do business and to do ways that way. And you probably have seen that with the internet adoption with like hundreds of examples.
It seems so obvious. And then like, for example, like I'm likely going to go to one of the Bitcoin conferences, and let's say I bump into you. We mentioned Bram earlier and Leon. Imagine us four see each other, and for whatever reason, we have to exchange some money between each other. Are we really going to exchange money through the old system? Or now do you have 4 people from 4 different countries going to exchange value between each other on a universal global standard called Bitcoin, a network of nodes maintained by thousands of people all over the world, protected by energy, with miners coming online, I feel like by the thousands every day. We're going to use this new beautiful network to exchange value between the 4 of us. And it seems so obvious. Like, why would we are from 4 different countries. Can you imagine we tried to exchange value between each other if we all went out to lunch at a Bitcoin conference in each other's local currency? Okay, like, Robin, how much do I owe you? Actually, you guys would all be on the euro now. You're all centralized on the euro. But can you imagine that? Like, Leon paying me in Canadian dollars and then me taking the Canadian dollars, exchanging them back to euros to pay you, Robin. Like, who would do that? And to us 4, it would just be so natural. Of course, we're just going to use Bitcoin. And that's why I just don't think that people get it. Like, us 4 are not going back. We're just going to keep using Bitcoin. And then I have children who have been in Bitcoin now. Like, my son is turning 23. My daughter's 19. They've been in Bitcoin now for 5 years as well. To them, it's just like, my daughter's 19. She's been saving in Bitcoin since she was 14. Like, she only knows really big. Like, she asked me, I think at one point, I think she was like turning 16. She's like, Dad, like, why do some of my friends have these bank accounts? You know what I mean? So like, it's already happening and just people don't see it. So it just seems like a foregone conclusion to me. And I also think like some of my friends who are looking at Bitcoin will look at it and they'll say, well, Tom, when's the moment that Bitcoin really takes off? And I'm like, no, like, it's happening now. Like, I had to lease a car or buy a car for our family a year and a half ago. And I remember looking at how much Bitcoin it would cost me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to exchange my Bitcoin for this car. I'm going to lease this car. I don't want to give it. At the time, I think it was going to be like a 1.5 Bitcoin. And I'm like, holy smokes, I don't want to exchange 1.5 Bitcoin for this car. I'm just going to lease this thing. Today, that car is worth, the same car, it's worth about 0.6 of a Bitcoin. So I was trying to explain to my friends, when you save in Bitcoin, the world is changing right now. Life is getting cheaper for Bitcoiners right now. So there's no moment. Like, I was always waiting for a moment when Bitcoin would win. And I'm like, no, what you have to understand, just like the way the internet businesses kind of sideswiped a lot of like offline businesses, Bitcoin is changing the money system right now. People who are Bitcoiners their purchasing power is getting ahead right now. There's no moment. The moment is now. It's happening every day and it's compounding. So you're either participating in this new network or you're choosing not to, but the network itself doesn't care. And it's happening right now.
It's a really good point. It's also, when you think about in Bitcoin, and I'm curious how this has changed your thinking, because I'm just too young. I started with Bitcoin when I was 21 years old, so I've never really thought about money and assets before a lot. But Bitcoin came for you a little bit later in your life. How has Bitcoin changed your thinking of wealth preservation, wealth building, and kind of getting, now we would say stacking sats, but that was not previously there?
I think the biggest thing, for whatever reason, I was telling my kids, I'm like, I'm not leaving anything for you. You need to suffer. You need to go through it. You need to go through it. You just need to suffer. And you through suffering, you learn a lot of lessons about yourself and life. And that's it. So don't look at your parents as like, we're leaving some real estate or some business stuff for you. You need to go and earn it for yourself. And for whatever reason, I had this shift with Bitcoin where I thought, wow, like, I might be able to really do something for my family if I can build up a family treasury of Bitcoin. And I would love to be able to pass that on to the next generation. And I was thinking, like, why did my thinking change? And I think it changed because with the old properties and businesses, you have to deal with estate taxes and changing ownership of the corporations. And like, it's a lot of pain to just move on assets that you've earned from one generation to the next generation. Like, there is a lot of planning. You know, there's life insurance policies that can help with that. You got to set all of this up. And I guess for whatever reason, maybe I just didn't want to deal with it, even though I was setting it up as well as I could. Maybe part of me was just like, ugh, you got to pay all these taxes to the government and you got to do all this stuff. Like, you know what? Just forget it. I'm actually saving you by not dealing with this. How about that? So maybe there was this weird thing where I was trying to save them from the hassle of dealing with everything. Then Bitcoin comes and it's just so beautifully simple. It's just this easy thing. Like, you have some Bitcoin and, you know, when I pass away, my family can get some Bitcoin. And I'm not trying to say to pay any of the taxes locally on the estate and stuff, but it's just very simple. But when you're transferring property ownership and there's tenants and properties that you have to deal with that you don't want to deal with, there's companies that are running with payroll to meet. Like, if this is the way value was stored, and now I'm almost giving you a burden, like, hey, here you go. Here's all this mess of stuff. Good luck. But now with Bitcoin, I can pass some real monetary value on that is so simple and so beautiful and so clean that it just changed my thinking on my own estate planning and my own thinking for my family. It really had a big impact on me.
There will come to the point back where when you give real estate to someone, it's more like giving a business away. I mean, outside if it's just one home, but if it's like developments and properties and a lot of things. So you give a business away and you have to think about, oh, how do I give a business to someone else? He has to be capable of leading that business, and probably it has to be already there when you're still alive and you have a transition period and stuff like that. And we've seen an example where it goes really well. We have seen an example where it doesn't go well. But with Bitcoin, it's just a savings account. You can give it to someone that he doesn't need to know how to run a Bitcoin business. He just has to know a few simple things, how to custody the Bitcoin. So I love the point.
Yeah. And I think something else is just changing is like, for my generation, when you talk to people my age, there's a lot of discussion of like, how much do I need to retire? When can I stop working? People are exhausted, but they don't know how to plan for retirement. They legit, because they're not aware of Bitcoin. So they don't know how to make the calculations. So I talk to a lot of people at my age that are just completely exhausted and frustrated, and they don't know where the end is. Whereas the benefit of your generation and you growing up with Bitcoin, although that you're looking at property prices that are still monetized in value, so it's still high to buy property, and you're like, oh god damn, why isn't the property price cheaper already? So you're fighting maybe that battle, but the benefit that you have is your long-term mindset. You're going to have a bit more peace of mind than my generation, because you can actually plan for your retirement properly. Like, you can think ahead and say, hey, if I have this much saved up in Bitcoin, I likely am not going to need to work anymore. Whereas my generation, people who don't understand Bitcoin, they don't have that. And so it is nice for me to see that your generation is going to be able to have that. Hopefully, at least that's my hope. And it's a kind of a beautiful change, because right now, I'm telling you, my generation in Canada, people are nervous. They don't know, how do you do the calculations for retirement when you don't know what the inflation rate's going to be? Is the inflation rate the 2 to 3% the government tells you? Is it the 8% of M2 debasement? Is it 12? Is the cost of capital really 12 or 13%? How do you do your calculations to retire? Whereas I feel like you'll be able to do it. And not only will that give you peace of mind, I really feel like you'll be able to have a better positive impact on society, because you're going to be able to do what you want to do in life. Whereas a lot of people my age have been forced into careers for 20, 30, 40 years, and they don't want to do what they're doing. But it's the only thing they know will earn them fiat dollars to try to make a life. So they're kind of going back to my Dave & Buster's or Chuck E. Cheese example. They're running around in this like circus environment trying to survive, where you're going to be on the outside and you'll be able to make some decisions where you might want to spend 10 years of your life doing something that is really important to you and really serves the community. And you'll be able to, because you're saving in Bitcoin. So it is like a big change that's already happening that maybe you don't see yet. But from my perspective and my age, I see that happening to you. And that's quite nice. That's quite good.
What do you think Bitcoin will bring to us, which isn't about financial things? Is something.
I think it's going to bring peace of mind. Like, I think it's going to return people to the family. Like, I think it's going to allow people the freedom to be able to think long term and make better decisions for themselves and their families. Whereas right now, people think so short term that everything is about survival. Like, I have to do this to make some money because I need to pay for my rent or my house, or, everything's just so immediate, and it just produces this kind of mindset of scarcity. So like, I feel like Bitcoin's going to like bring love back. I feel like everyone's been operating from a place of fear. And when I meet Bitcoiners like yourself, Rob, and other Bitcoiners, it's like everyone's pretty kind of cool. Everyone's kind of friendly. Everybody's kind of like, okay, maybe things aren't perfect, but there's hope. And I feel like it's going to bring that back in a compounding way, like over the next 10 years. Like, if you look at, we're at 2025, if in 2015, I don't know how many people were talking like this, but there's definitely more people talking like this in 2025 than there was in 2015. If we extrapolated another 10 years in 2035, how many more people will be talking like the way we're talking right now, where Bitcoin could bring back hope and love and focus on the family? I think it's going to be a lot more. I think there might be chaos in between here and there. I think it might be chaotic in a lot of ways, especially in the old system, but I think it's going to be a lot more. And I think that's going to be beautiful. Like, everybody I meet right now, there's some young families in my area. They're in their late 30s. They have many kids. They're just trying to survive with their business and pay their rent. They have no time to think and plan and focus on what's important for them. And I think Bitcoin's going to return that to them. And I think that's just beautiful. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird times.
I love that. It's
weird.
a beautiful answer. I love it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just, yeah. I hope it's right. I hope it's right.
We'll make a second round, or second round we will make definitely sooner, but like some variation of that podcast in 10 years and look back at the first round of this podcast and see how it went.
Yeah. I guess I'm just hesitating because like I think I have Jeff Booth's like some of his comments ringing in my ears. Like it's probably going to be chaotic between here and there. You know, it's going to be great, but it's also going to be wild. You know,
it's a question that I have a lot in my mind. I'm now so convinced that we go to this Bitcoin standard. It's a question of how fast and how rocky will the way be.
Same. Yeah, exactly. But then I think there's just more of us. Like I'm just getting to know you now, and we have some mutual friends. And you've had Jeff. We talked about Jeff. You know, and I'm friends with Greg Foss. And like it's like another group of us connected together, all thinking very similarly, but now globally. And it's not just that we're all becoming friends, we're all controlling capital. And we're all making decisions kind of with the same principles. And I think that compounds. Like, I think it's very positive for humanity. Anyway, I'm getting way off now. Yeah.
I 100% agree with you here. We have a question in the podcast that I asked each and every one of my guests. And the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
The biggest thing, we get asked that with from some of our clients is that, my brother and I were able to create personal freedom through the ability of building our own business from scratch. $0, 0 clients, 0 database of leads. And we were lucky enough to stumble into some mentors that taught us about like marketing and business building. And the marketing and business building strategies that we've learned over the years, to me, offer me pure freedom because I feel I can end up in Croatia or Vienna next to you and open a business and use the exact same principles, and start a successful business. Exchange value, and in return of that value, accept some Bitcoin, and that gives me great peace of mind and freedom, knowing that I can do that. So our business building skills really have been valuable to us. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, Robin, but yeah, we've spent a lot of time studying marketing and what we discovered, just kind of like money, that a lot of people focus on tactics and strategies instead of principles. And when you enter business with principles and then layer in strategies and then use tactics, it's a lot simpler than, using tactics and trying to build up to a principle leveled business. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I love that. And knowledge and experience are the two things that are more valuable than Bitcoin. I mean, yes, time and family and all those things, but those come for me all in experience, and then there's knowledge, and those are the two things that are more important and more valuable than Bitcoin. And after that, there's not a lot.
Yeah, agreed.
Really cool. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, do you think there is a science behind Bitcoin?
Do I think there's a science behind Bitcoin?
The question comes from an astrophysicist.
Great. You gave me an easy one. I think there is some design behind Bitcoin. Yes. I don't know how they're defining science, but I think there is some higher, there is something behind Bitcoin than just like a random act. So yeah, I don't know how to answer in the science. I'm no astrophysicist or whatever you said. So I apologize. You have to extend my apologies. I'm ruining the answer, but yeah, I would say yes. There's something scientific about Bitcoin. Yes.
Yeah, he's Stephen from the Paolo. I don't want to even try to pronounce his last name because for me it just sounds like paranoid. So the paranoid, but it's definitely pronounced differently. But yeah, he's big on the power law, and I think he was pointing to that. But yeah, it's also the question of how you define science, because you're like, oh, Bitcoin could be computer science. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have a question for your next guest. Is Bitcoin a form of consciousness?
Oh, I love that.
I'm curious on that answer. Is Bitcoin a form of consciousness? Poor next guest, who's going to answer that question?
It's that's the fun of it, because I tailor all the question for the guest, or at least directly or indirectly, I tailor it for the guest, because I would only ask you things that I think might be interesting to hear from you. But there's this one question at the end where the previous guest doesn't even know who the next guest is, and just throws things at him. And sometimes it's really suitable and sometimes not, but it's always fun for me.
Cool.
Yeah, really cool. Thank you so much, Tom. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Sure. I'm just on, maybe X would be the easiest place to find me. Just Tom Karadza, my name, on X. And then if you Google up Rockstar Real Estate Toronto, you'll find us on Google. If anyone's local and wants to find our business, that's how to find us.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Tom, for being on the show. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.